There's a man in Scottsdale, Arizona, who drives a 2019 Toyota Camry, wears the same 3 polo shirts on rotation, and eats lunch at the same sandwich shop every Tuesday. His neighbors think he works in insurance. He doesn't. He owns 14 portable restroom units and a pressure washing route that together clear more than $40,000 a month. He has never once posted about it online. He has never mentioned it at a barbecue. And if you asked him what he does for a living, he'd probably just say, a little bit of everything. That right there is the pattern nobody talks about. The wealthiest people in most neighborhoods aren't the ones with the flashy cars and the Instagram stories. They're the ones running businesses so boring, so unglamorous, so invisible that you could walk past them 1,000 times and never realize someone is getting rich from them. After studying hundreds of business models, financial reports, and real operator stories, I identified 15 businesses that quietly build serious wealth and that rich people almost never bring up in conversation. Not because they're ashamed of them, because talking about them would invite competition into the one thing protecting their income, the fact that nobody else wants to do it. Some of these are going to sting a little because you've probably dismissed them your entire life. And if you're only going to remember one, make it the last one. It has created more quiet millionaires than almost any trendy startup you've ever heard of, and it's hiding in plain sight in every city in this country. My name is John. Let's get into it. Business 15, septic tank pumping and maintenance. Let's start with the one that makes people physically cringe, and that's exactly why it belongs here. Every rural and suburban property without municipal sewer service has a septic tank. That tank needs to be pumped every 3 to 5 years. And when it backs up, the homeowner doesn't comparison shop. They call whoever can get there fastest, and they pay whatever that person charges. A single pump out costs between $300 and $600. A truck equipped for the job costs between $80,000 and $150,000, which sounds like a lot until you realize that one truck running 3 to 4 jobs per day generates $100 to $200 to $2,400 daily. That's potentially $25,000 to $50,000 per month from one truck and one driver. The septic services industry in the United States generates over $5 billion annually, and the vast majority of operators are small, independent, family-run businesses. Why don't rich people talk about this one? Because the moment you say, I pump septic tanks, the conversation dies, but the bank account stays very much alive. And here's the detail that turns this from a job into a business. Smart operators don't just pump and leave. They sell annual maintenance contracts, $200 to $400 per year per household, that guarantee the customer priority service and routine inspections. A route of 300 maintenance contracts at $300 each is $90,000 in recurring annual revenue before you pump a single emergency call. That's money that shows up whether or not the phone rings. The barrier to entry is disgust. And disgust, it turns out, is the most profitable moat in business. Business 14, grease trap cleaning for restaurants. Speaking of things nobody wants to deal with, every commercial kitchen in the country is required by law to maintain a grease trap. And every grease trap needs to be cleaned regularly, usually every 1 to 3 months, depending on local health codes. Fail to clean it, and the restaurant gets fined. Let it overflow, and the restaurant gets shut down. A single grease trap cleaning costs between $150 and $500, depending on the size. And here's where it gets interesting. A mid-sized city has hundreds, sometimes thousands of restaurants, each one legally required to have this service done on a schedule. One operator with a vacuum truck and 200 restaurant contracts on a monthly rotation is looking at $30,000 to $100,000 per month. The competition is almost non-existent in most markets because the work is messy, it smells terrible, and it happens at odd hours when restaurants are closed. Nobody brags about this at dinner parties. But the operators who do this work live extremely well. And there's a pattern starting to form here that you're going to see repeat throughout this entire list. The businesses that are the most physically unpleasant to describe are usually the least competitive and the most profitable per hour worked. Business 13, document shredding services. This one surprises people because it sounds too simple. You buy a commercial-grade mobile shredding truck for between $50,000 and $150,000, drive to offices, medical facilities, law firms, and banks, and shred their confidential documents on site. They watch the paper go in. They get a certificate of destruction. They pay you between $100 and $500 per visit, depending on the volume. The document shredding industry in the United States is worth over $3 billion annually, driven largely by HIPAA compliance requirements and data protection regulations that force businesses to destroy records properly. And one operator with a single truck and 150 regular accounts can generate between $15,000 and $30,000 per month. The truck does the work. You're essentially selling peace of mind and legal compliance. Here's what almost nobody tells you about this business. The real money isn't in the per visit charge, it's in the locked bins. You place secure collection bins inside each client's office for free. They fill them up over a month. You come by on a schedule, shred the contents, and charge for the pickup. Those bins are like vending machines that collect paper instead of coins. Once a bin is placed, the client almost never cancels, because removing it means finding another vendor, signing new compliance paperwork, and explaining to their legal department why they switched. The churn rate in this business is remarkably low. And when was the last time someone at a cocktail party said, "I shred paper for a living"? Never. That's the point. Business 12, commercial laundry services for hotels and restaurants. I'm not talking about consumer laundromats. I'm talking about the industrial side. The one where you wash, fold, and deliver hundreds of pounds of linens, tablecloths, chef coats, and hotel sheets every single day. The commercial laundry and dry cleaning industry in the United States generates over $10 billion annually. A single commercial laundry facility serving 20 to 30 hotel and restaurant accounts can generate between $50,000 and $200,000 per month. The startup costs are high, $200,000 to $500,000 for industrial washers, dryers, pressers, and a delivery vehicle, but the contracts are long-term and deeply sticky. A hotel that switches laundry providers risks inconsistent quality during their busiest season. They don't switch unless you give them a reason to. Think about it like this. Every hotel room you've ever slept in had clean sheets. Someone washed those sheets. Someone delivered them folded and wrapped in plastic at 5 o'clock in the morning before you checked in. That person isn't famous. That person isn't on LinkedIn posting about hustle culture. That person is quietly depositing 5-figure checks every week, while the rest of the world argues about which online business is trending. Business 11, elevator maintenance and inspection. There are approximately 900,000 elevators operating in the United States right now. Every single one of them is required by law to be inspected and maintained on a regular schedule. Most buildings sign annual maintenance contracts worth between $3,000 and $12,000 per elevator per year. An elevator maintenance company with contracts covering 200 elevators is generating between $600,000 and $2.4 million annually. The barrier to entry is technical certification, which takes time but isn't impossibly complex. And because the work requires specialized knowledge that most people never pursue, competition remains thin. Here's the part that rich people definitely don't mention. Once you hold the maintenance contract on an elevator, you effectively own that relationship for years. Switching elevator service providers requires inspections, recertification, and liability transfers that building managers simply don't want to deal with. You become the most boring and essential person in the building. Nobody knows your name, but everybody needs you there. And that's a position of power most business owners would kill for. Business 10, fire protection and sprinkler system inspection. Every commercial building, warehouse, hospital, school, and shopping center in the country has a fire sprinkler system. Every one of those systems must be inspected annually, some quarterly, under NFPA codes. Fail the inspection, and the building can't get its occupancy certificate renewed. The fire protection services industry in the United States is valued at over $22 billion. A single inspection visit costs between $200 and $2,000, depending on the building size and system complexity. An operator managing 300 annual inspection contracts with an average of $800 per visit is generating $240,000 a year from inspections alone, before any repair work, which is where the real margin lives. When a sprinkler head fails or a pipe corrodes, the building owner doesn't negotiate. They pay whatever the repair costs, because the alternative is being shut down by the fire marshal. The regulations create the demand. The certifications limit the supply. And the consequences of not paying are severe enough that customers never leave. This is the kind of business you discover when you stop asking what's trending and start asking what's required by law. Business 9, waste cooking oil collection. Every restaurant that fries food produces used cooking oil. That oil has to go somewhere. If it goes down the drain, the restaurant gets fined. If it sits in the fryer too long, the food quality drops, so someone has to collect it. That someone gets paid twice. First, many restaurants pay a small fee for regular pickup, typically $50 to $150 per month. Second, the collected oil is sold to biodiesel processors at $0.30 to $0.60 per pound. A truck collecting from 200 restaurants on a bi-weekly route can generate $15,000 to $30,000 per month from the combination of pickup fees and resale. The global used cooking oil market was valued at over $6 billion and is projected to grow significantly as biodiesel demand increases. Here's the genius of this business. The restaurants want you to come. They need you to come. If you don't show up, they have a legal and operational problem on their hands. You're not selling anything. You're solving a recurring headache and getting paid on both ends of the transaction. The startup costs are modest. A used vacuum truck costs between $30,000 and $70,000, and the route building process is straightforward because every restaurant within driving distance is a potential customer. Business 8, commercial hood cleaning. This one is directly connected to the business you just heard. Every commercial kitchen with a cooking hood is required by law to have that hood and its exhaust system professionally cleaned on a regular schedule, typically every 3 to 6 months depending on cooking volume. Fail the inspection, and the insurance company can void the restaurant's fire coverage. One hood cleaning job costs between $300 and $500 depending on the size and complexity of the system. A 2-person crew can complete 2 to 3 jobs per night. That's $600 to $4,500 per shift. And most of the work happens between midnight and 6 a.m. when the restaurants are closed. The cleaning is physical, hot, greasy, and exhausting, which is precisely why the operators who stick with it face almost no competition and can charge premium rates. A well-run hood cleaning business with 150 recurring accounts generates between $300,000 and $600,000 annually. And from my research, this is one of the businesses with the highest customer retention rates I've come across. Restaurants don't switch hood cleaners unless something goes very wrong, because the liability risk of using an unknown operator is too high. Think about the leverage here. The customer can't say no. The law requires the service, the insurance company enforces it, and the health inspector verifies it. You're not competing on marketing. You're competing on showing up consistently and doing the job correctly. That's it. Business 7, backflow preventer testing. If you've never heard of this, that's the entire point. A backflow preventer is a device installed on commercial and residential water lines to prevent contaminated water from flowing backward into the public water supply. Every municipality in the country requires these devices to be tested annually by a certified tester. The certification process takes about 40 hours of training and costs between $500 and $2,000. After that, a certified tester charges between $50 and $150 per test. And here's the number that stops people. A single commercial building can have 10 to 50 backflow devices that all need testing on the same day. That's $500 to $7,500 for one building visit. A tester running an efficient route of 15 to 20 buildings per week can generate $200,000 to $400,000 annually, working standard business hours with no employees. The annual testing requirement means every customer comes back every single year without you needing to sell them anything. The demand is literally written into city ordinance. You don't need to convince anyone. You just need to show up with the gauge and the certification. Business 6, portable storage container rentals, not self-storage facilities, portable containers, the ones you see sitting in driveways during renovations or on construction sites next to heavy equipment. You buy or lease shipping containers, modify them with basic lock systems, and rent them out to contractors, homeowners, and small businesses for $100 to $300 per month each. A fleet of 50 containers generates $5,000 to $15,000 per month. A fleet of 200 generates $20,000 to $60,000. The containers cost between $3,000 and $6,000 each, and they last for 25 years with minimal maintenance. The beauty of this business is the stacking math. Every container you add increases your monthly income without increasing your workload proportionally. Delivery and pickup can be outsourced to a flatbed driver. The containers sit on the customer's property, not yours. You don't need a yard. You don't need a warehouse. You just need a phone and a list of contractors who always need more storage on their job sites. Now I want you to notice something about the first 10 businesses on this list. Not a single one of them gets discussed on social media. Not a single one has influencers building courses around it. And that silence is not a coincidence. It's the competitive advantage. The moment a business becomes popular to talk about, competition floods in and margins collapse. The businesses on this list survive precisely because nobody wants to talk about them. Business 5, specialty trade staffing. This is one of the smartest businesses on this entire list, and it requires 0 tools. You don't do the work. You connect the people who do the work with the companies who need them: electricians, plumbers, welders, HVAC technicians, heavy equipment operators. Every construction company in America is struggling to find enough skilled tradespeople. The skilled labor shortage in the United States has been well documented, with industry groups estimating a deficit of over 500,000 workers in construction alone. A specialty staffing agency places these workers on temporary or contract assignments and charges the client company a markup of 30 to 60% on top of the worker's hourly rate. If you place 20 workers at an average bill rate of $45 per hour and a markup of 40%, your gross profit is $3,600 per day. That's over $90,000 per month in gross margin. The startup costs are relatively low, $10,000 to $30,000 for insurance, licensing, and basic operations. The business scales by adding more workers and more client relationships. And the retention is strong because construction companies hate the hiring process and will gladly pay a premium to have someone else handle it. You're invisible to the end consumer. Nobody knows you exist. but the contractors who rely on you consider you irreplaceable. Business 4, commercial property tax consulting. Here's one that genuinely shocked me. Every commercial property in the United States is assessed for property taxes by the local government. And in a significant percentage of cases, those assessments are wrong, usually too high. A commercial property tax consultant reviews assessments, identifies overvaluations, files appeals on behalf of the property owner, and takes a contingency fee of 25 to 40% of the tax savings generated. No savings, no fee. The property owner risks nothing, which makes it an extremely easy sell. An experienced consultant handling 50 to 100 appeals per year can generate $200,000 to $500,000 in annual fee income. The startup costs are minimal. You need knowledge of property tax assessment methods, access to comparable sales data, and the ability to present appeals to assessment review boards. It's deeply unsexy, operates entirely behind the scenes, and creates enormous value for the client without the client ever having to think about it again. The property owner gets a lower tax bill every year for as long as the reduced assessment holds. And the consultant moves on to the next appeal. It's pure leverage. Your knowledge generates money. Your time investment happens once. The savings compound annually. Business 3, medical waste disposal. Every hospital, dental office, veterinary clinic, tattoo parlor, and laboratory in the country produces regulated medical waste. Needles, blood-soaked gauze, expired medications, biological samples. All of it must be collected, transported, and disposed of according to strict federal and state regulations. The medical waste management market in the United States generates over $3 billion annually and is growing as healthcare facilities expand. A small medical waste hauler with contracts covering 100 to 200 facilities can generate between $30,000 and $80,000 per month. The contracts are long-term, typically 1 to 3 years, with automatic renewal clauses. And switching providers requires new compliance documentation, which most office managers simply don't want to deal with. The startup requires a specialized vehicle, proper containers, and state-level licensing, typically $50,000 to $150,000 to get operational. But once you're running, the business has extraordinarily low churn. Healthcare providers don't gamble with their medical waste disposal because the regulatory fines for improper handling start at $25,000 per violation and can reach into the millions. Here's the question nobody asks about this business. Why would a dentist who pays you $200 a month for reliable, compliant waste pickup ever switch to save $20? They wouldn't. The risk isn't worth it. And that asymmetry between the cost of your service and the cost of a compliance failure is what makes this business almost impossible to lose once you've built it. Business 2, parking lot. Maintenance and sweeping. Every shopping center, office park, hospital, and commercial property in America needs its parking lot maintained. That means sweeping, striping, pothole repair, and seasonal services like snow removal and salting. A commercial parking lot sweeper truck costs between $60,000 and $200,000. A line striping machine costs between $3,000 and $5,000. Together, they unlock a business that generates between $20,000 and $80,000 per month, depending on the number of contracts. Most parking lot maintenance is done at night when the lots are empty. A truck running 5 to 6 properties per night at $300 to $800 per sweep generates $1,500 to $4,800 per shift. Multiply that across 20 to 25 nights per month, and the numbers become very real, very fast. And here's the part that transforms this from a service into a wealth-building machine. Property managers sign annual contracts for sweeping services. Those contracts renew automatically every year because the property management company doesn't want to think about parking lot sweeping. They want it done. They want it done consistently. And they want someone else to handle it so they never get a complaint from a tenant. Once you hold that contract, you're functionally invisible. And invisible in this business means indispensable. And that brings us to business number 1, the one I told you about at the beginning, the one that has quietly created more millionaires in the United States than almost any trendy startup. And the one that almost nobody, and I mean nobody, brags about. Business 1, commercial cleaning contracts for government and institutional buildings, not residential house cleaning, not small office tidying. I'm talking about the operators who hold contracts with school districts, municipal buildings, courthouses, federal offices, military facilities, hospitals, and university campuses. The commercial cleaning industry in the United States generates over $90 billion annually. But the segment that builds real generational wealth is institutional and government contract cleaning, because those contracts are massive, multi-year, and incredibly stable. A single school district contract can be worth $500,000 to $3 million per year. A federal building contract can run $1 million to $10 million annually. And here's what makes this the number 1 business on this list. Government contracts are publicly listed, The bidding process is transparent, and most small operators don't even know they can bid on them or how to navigate the process. There's a man who started with a $15,000 contract, cleaning one elementary school after hours. Within 5 years, he held contracts with the entire district, 3 municipal buildings, and a state university campus. His annual revenue crossed $4 million. He employs 60 people. He drives the same truck he bought in 2019. And his neighbors still think he does cleaning or something. The barrier to entry isn't capital, it's patience. The bidding process takes time. The compliance paperwork is tedious. The first contract might be small, but once you're in the system, once you have a performance record and a GSA schedule or a state vendor registration, the next contract comes easier. And the next one after that comes easier still. You compound not just money, but trust and reputation inside a system that rewards consistency over creativity. Now, I want to pause here and tell you something I think matters more than any individual business on this list. After looking at the actual patterns of people who built real wealth, the conclusion is always the same. The impressive-sounding businesses are usually the ones that fail, and the embarrassing-sounding businesses are usually the ones that succeed. Thomas Stanley and William Danko found in The Millionaire Next Door that the most common businesses among millionaires weren't exciting. They were janitorial services, pest control, paving contractors, welding shops, businesses that solved permanent problems for people who would always need them solved. And institutional cleaning is the crown jewel of that category because the client isn't one person who might cancel. The client is a government entity with a legal obligation to keep its buildings clean. An obligation that will exist as long as the building exists. Let me show you what that difference looks like in 2 real lives. Travis was 35 when he decided he wanted financial freedom. He spent 3 years building an e-commerce brand, custom packaging, Instagram ads, influencer partnerships, beautiful product photos. He burned through $80,000 in savings and credit card debt. By 38, the brand was dead, the debt was real, and he was back at his sales job wondering what went wrong. His friend Darren was the same age when he bought a used parking lot sweeper truck for $45,000. He drove it himself for the first year, sweeping 3 commercial lots per night, 5 nights a week. Nobody congratulated him. Nobody asked about his business at parties. His own mother told him he was wasting his potential. By year 3, Darren had 2 trucks, 4 employees, and 40 contracts. His annual revenue crossed $600,000. His profit margin sat at 35%. He paid off his house. He put his kids in private school. And he still shows up to job sites at midnight twice a week because he likes the quiet. The difference between Travis and Darren isn't intelligence, luck, or starting capital. It's that Travis chose a business everyone wanted to talk about. And Darren chose a business nobody wanted to talk about. And that's the uncomfortable truth behind every single business on this list. The less people want to discuss it, the more money it probably makes. Because competition follows attention. Where there's attention, there are 100 people chasing the same idea. Where there's silence, there's one person quietly collecting checks. Every business on this list shares the same invisible architecture. The demand is permanent. The customer can't delay the service. The work is unpleasant enough to scare away competition. And the contracts are long enough to create real recurring income. If you take one thing away from this video, let it be this. The next time you evaluate any business idea, stop asking yourself whether it sounds impressive. Start asking yourself whether it sounds like something nobody else wants to do. Because that question alone will filter out 90% of the overcrowded markets and leave you standing in the ones where the money is actually waiting. The businesses rich people never talk about are the ones worth talking about the most. If this video changed how you think about even one business, hit that like button. It helps more than you know. Subscribe if you want more content about real wealth strategies that don't require a viral moment to work. And tell me in the comments which of these 15 businesses surprised you the most, or which one you've seen operating in your own city without ever realizing what it was. I read every single comment. I'm John, and I'll see you in the next one.